Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast for our very special end of year podcast for 2024. I'm joined today by the fabulous editorial team. I'm Kimberly Dondo and I'm going to let everyone else introduce themselves. Tom, do you want to start us off?
Sure. My name is Tom Brown. I'm editor of Money Marketing.
Dan Cooper, news editor.
I'm Lois Vallely, chief reporter.
Mamadou Musatoure, senior reporter.
And I'm Darius McQuaid, reporter.
Phenomenal. Thank you all for joining me. I know that we are gearing up for the end of the year and it has been a long year. Some might say that it's felt like 10 years in one, but there have been a lot of exciting changes. So I guess to start us off, I wanted to know what was the most surprising trend or story that you covered this year? Not necessarily surprising, but maybe interesting or out of the ordinary. Anyone want to hop in on that one first?
Well, I'll probably start. It's not really a story or a trend. It's of course the budget, which is obviously, and it's certainly not surprising in the sense that it was trailered a long time in advance. People made the comment that the gap between the election result and Rachel Reeves delivering her first budget was 117 days. That's the longest gap in 50 years. So there was plenty of time for people to speculate, to ruminate on what it might be. Lots of time for clients to make panic calls to their advisors as what might happen, what might this mean in terms of capital gains, inheritance tax, or what have you. And that really kind of set the tone for pretty much as soon as the election was called, because everyone knew that the Conservative Party were going to lose and people suspected that the Labour Party were going to win big, and what that would mean for the fiscal landscape. And the mood music was not good, obviously. Both Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer made rather mowed the lawn by sort of saying this is going to be painful. There are difficult choices to be made. Hence, some of the sort of panic amongst the advisor community. But certainly, she delivered a painful budget. I mean, 15% national insurance hike for employers, inheritance tax on now being imposed on inherited pensions, rises in capital gains tax rates, halving of relief on AIM, lots of other measures. I mean, and to the background of, this is necessary to raise money for to plug this black hole that was talked about a lot, but also for investment in public services. But we've seen ever since then some rather stagnant economic growth. So the big question, I think, in terms of the economy for next year is it going to grow or is it going to carry on stagnating? So that has really dominated. That's been in the background of all of our coverage for, pretty much the whole latter half of the year.
Yeah, I think also the stamp duty that was imposed the next day sent a lot of people into a panic as well. But yeah, it was quite an interesting budget. Anyone else? Yeah. Anyone else want to hop in with any story that stood out for them?
So the FCA has obviously been very busy this year, and there's been this deluge of regulation on financial services firms, particularly financial advisors, which I'm not going to go through all of, obviously, because that would just take hours. But Dan's written an article about it for anyone who wants to have a quick get a quick wrap up of it. But one thing I found particularly interesting was the FCA. Obviously, we've had over a year now of the consumer duty, but the consumer duty's anniversary was in July of its implementation. And the FCA has recently published its first review of consumer duty, or its review of the first consumer duty board reports. And one of the things that it said was that basically data quality is lacking, and it's not obviously not all firms, because some firms are producing very good quality data that is backing up their claims of good outcomes for consumers. But the FCA said there is a concern that quite a few firms aren't backing up their claims with enough good quality data. And that's obviously one of the biggest things that has been said about the consumer duty all along. Financial advisors, especially smaller advice firms, often say, well, we're already doing good things for consumers. Like, why do we have to show that? But that is one of the things that's the biggest sort of thing to come out of the consumer duty that the FCA wants is evidence of good consumer outcomes. So I think that is definitely something that this is across all of financial services. It's not just advice firms, but this is something that advice firms definitely need to be very much aware of. Also in that review, the FCA was talking about, obviously smaller firms often don't have the same level of compliance function as like a bigger advice firm. And the FCA says that it's aware of that, but it's suggested, and I think it's already suggested this like last year in a webinar, but it's suggested again that smaller firms appoint like a, in quotations, critical friend that can help them with consumer duty compliance. So those are the two sort of biggest things to come out of the review. And obviously the FCA said it doesn't expect the board reports to be perfect. They're just the first ones, but it's just sort of flagged up how firms can improve.
Wow, that is a lot of FCA talk.
Yeah.
They've been a busy bunch this year.
They have, just slipping in some reviews, some, I don't know, amendments. But Dan, is there anything else that stood out for you?
Oh, blimey. Well, you said, as you said, it's feels like 10 years it rolled into 1 year, and that's just for us. It's kept us busy on the news front. But I'm not sure I want to be an advisor right now in terms of trying to get your head around all that regulation and trying to implement it, the cost of implementing it. It must be a real challenge at the moment.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's probably the Mansion House speech, which was a couple of months back now. And when before Labour came into power, they kind of vowed to unashamedly champion financial services should they get in, which obviously they did. And I think the pension mega funds was quite an interesting thing to come out of the Mansion House speech. You're sort of trying to replicate some of the schemes that are seen in Australia and Canada, which are generally regarded to be sort of up there with the best pension schemes in the world. Whether it'll work here, this is kind of a different matter. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting point. Because at the moment there's sort of the 86 different fragmented kind of local government schemes, and Rachel Reeves is proposing to kind of merge them into much smaller funds that can grow at a higher rates and sort of shift the focus onto investing in private markets, which again they do in Australia and Canada. So I thought that was quite an interesting point.
Yeah. And Momadou?
Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned kind of like surprising story. So you said surprising story. I would definitely say the Dead Happy story, which that was a kind of like a disruptor, farm in the protection sector, but and they've been known, for kind of like publishing very provocative, adverts. And I think they went one step too far, with the Harold Shipman adverts that forced the farm to close. So in March, the farm announced that they're no longer accepting customers. I think because the insurers they were working working with, to help them, underwrite, kind of like, had, about enough of Dead Happy's.
Yeah, they wanted to step back.
Yeah, they're like, this is too much, it's bad for our brand, reputational damage and all that stuff, But yeah, as I say, that was surprising in the sense that people thought, Dead Happy's, ad was kind of like a tongue in cheek. People understand, but I think with the FCA, stepping in, the advertising standard, agency, and also authority also stepping in and saying that that's unacceptable and other stuff, even though they were helping the sector, kind of like accessing, markets or people who will not, otherwise, buy life insurance.
Yeah.
So I think when they shut their door, that was a big statement. Even though people in the sector, we are saying "I told you so," because I think they were pushing the envelope, But sometimes you wonder, you want some, we want a farm or people that will shake up the industry, trying to do things I mean, definitely.
I think it should be pretty obvious that you shouldn't use a serial killer to sell.
No, I understand. I understand. But as I say, they've been very provocative. I mean, they've been doing.
There's being provocative, and then there's just like being callous.
No, indeed. I'm not defending them. I mean,
there's that line in This Is Spinal Tap, which is such a fine line between clever and stupid.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things that in another day you kind of think, oh, how daring and provocative. But I remember the gasp that went around the office when we first saw that advert, which was a sort of, what the hell were they thinking with this one? Yeah,
who signed this one off?
Yeah, exactly. Especially because in my mind, things like that have to go through so many eyes and hands. It's just for no one to have raised any flag and be like, I don't know if this will be received very well.
Would never have happened at Money Marketing as well.
No.
definitely not. I mean, every year they've been kind of like pushing it, far. So I think this one, as I say, went too far. And for everyone involved. I mean, for the regulator, for the underwriters, everyone, and that's the death knell, for an exciting farm, so hopefully.
At least now we know the line is, don't use serial killers to promote your stuff.
What do they say when they close their doors? Dead unhappy.
Dead unhappy.
So at least we got that joke out of it. Yeah,
exactly. Company's closed down. We've got one last joke, don't we?
Yeah. And Darius.
Yeah, I think for me, when I wrote a story about the double count disclosures of double counted costs for investments trust, because I thought it was quite interesting with the time when I wrote it as well. But basically, because of despite Brexit, even though a rule we inherited from the European Union, when it comes to investment trust, it would sort of state the cost of the trust twice. So it made it look like to the investor that it cost twice as much to invest in it actually does. And it was putting people off investing in it, even when they did have advisors, to explain to them why this is. It was still, because psychologically it looks like it's worth double the price, and it's sort of hard not to react to that from a human point of view. People saying like it's costing $7 billion a year of not getting into investments and so forth. That was obviously weighing down investment trust sector. And I wrote a behind the headlines piece on a deep analysis in early September. And then it came late in September. Then the Labour government then introduced a temporary ban on the issue, and saying 2025 the Treasury and FCA are going to implement a rule that sort of alleviate this problem, and then makes it more clear how much the trust actually costs to invest in, and to sort of get rid of confusion. So I was just happy that I had really good timing when I wrote that, because I wrote it as a genuine story at the start of September, and then by the end of it, the Treasury and FCA made an announcement saying we're going to deal with it, and we're going to alleviate the issue. So it was just it was an interesting piece to write, but I just thought I was just quite happy with my timing of my publishing that article, because it went well with the official government lines as well.
And sticking with you, what article or story are you most proud of publishing this year, apart from that one that you just mentioned?
I would say I quite published it towards the end of the year, but regarding emerging markets and how they're more conducive to active investing over passive investing. And I quite liked it because one trend is that passive investing is always, it gets a lot more attention as way forward, actives on its way out, and so forth. And it's very rare you come across an article that says active is sort of doing better, or reaps more rewards. So it was interesting to see there's a specific area where people think active does that. Passive isn't really sort of tailored as well to the sector. And it is actually, in fact, active that is reaping more rewards for investors. And I think emerging markets is quite an interesting piece in general, and it's it reaps a lot of sort of rewards, and your IMF says it's leading a lot to global growth and so forth. So yeah, I think it was just a interesting topic to dive into and to speak to people about, and I liked it. It was different from your typical headline as well.
Yeah. I think next year will be a lot more about emerging markets, especially with certain tariffs being put in place, and people might be changing their allegiances. Yeah, 2025 is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the tariffs are definitely could be painful for a lot of countries, but for emerging markets especially, yeah. But I think it's just sort of a wait and see approach at the moment, really. But yeah, that will definitely be a factor.
Yeah. And Dan, what story are you most proud of publishing?
Oh, it's a good question. I think I mentioned Mansion House before, and I think just purely because of the impact on the sector and the budget stories, as Tom mentioned earlier, there's obviously a lot to get your teeth stuck into on that one. I think for a personal one was probably the interview I did with Nick Holm at the FCA, who's the head of Advisors, Wealth and Pension. So I attended the Consumer Duty Alliance conference in November. So I had a chance to kind of sit down with him one-on-one for about 25 minutes, which is kind of quite rare, really. You just got to put, loads of different things to him. Credit to Nick, he was really open about a lot of things. So I think that's probably one of my kind of highlights in terms of an article that I've written.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it is pretty great that you were able to nab someone from the FCA. I think because, like you said, it is
so much going on at the moment. Lois covered it earlier, and in terms of regulation, it's just been a year like no other, really. So there's a chance to kind of put a load of different things to him about different subjects was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And Momody, what are you most proud of that you've written in 2024?
I would say the money marketing advisor protection roundtable. I think that was a very good one. We managed to assemble a very powerful team, or a very good team of advisors, brokers, insurers in one room to discuss, kind of like the state of the protection, sector. And but it was a very candid roundtable, and all issues were covered, from protection sales, to claims data, to the consumer duty, service level, AI, technology, innovation, the views. We express, and I enjoy writing, that, because when you have, as I say, 10 people in a room, without any PR or pressure, to express themselves, and they made very frank, views on how to improve the sector, how to shape the sector, and I'm also doing a follow up, to that, So I think, it seemed like a very good article, to kind of like, a very good story that's nowadays a follow up, story being written.
I just wonder what it was like being a part of that round table, and controlling that many people who are so passionate about protection.
It was exciting, as I say. You have people from different walks, and of course, as I say, you have advisors and insurers, and they don't seem to see things the same way when it comes to poor service. I think the standout issue in that discussion was around poor service, because I think that's the gripe of many advisors. They've been complaining of issues when it comes to underwriting, when it comes to claims, and
then being stuck on the phone for hours.
Exactly, and that was a point that was raised by one advisor, that you spend like hours on the phone just to get through, and things don't get done, and for you to get GP reports from the providers, I mean, for them to get, the medical reports from the GP, take ages, and that's very bad, in the sense that if you're an advisor dealing with a customer, who is going through, either an illness or diagnosis, or what they want to claim, and they are struggling financially, that's a pressure on you, So I think the advisors were able to, frankly, make their points across, to the insurers, and yeah, as I say, the exchange was very frank, and then they agreed to disagree on certain issues on how to improve service levels. COVID was mentioned, but that was ages ago. So kind of like people are saying you're going to use COVID as a defense. I think it's much more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the takeaways from from the roundtable was that kind of like this sector, particularly insurers, have to up their game. They have to kind of like invest more, in terms of service, and make sure that advisors are able to do their job, because as we keep saying or banging the same drum, all the time, every year, claims. It's always an issue, and this affects consumer confidence in terms of the sector. If you have to wait, forever, just to get a claims done or get coverage, that would just put you off seeking, protection.
Yeah. And Lois, what were you most proud of in 2024 that you published?
It's really hard to pick just one because all my articles are amazing.
Yep.
And that may sound big-headed, but as Tom said off podcast, I am a raging megalomaniac. So I think it's kind of fitting. Anyway, the one I think I enjoyed most and I thought came out best was the cover story I wrote on the next phase of the advice guidance boundary review. Partly because I wrote it in 2 days, because the FCA published an update sort of just as we were about to go to press. So I was going to be writing a cover feature on something that came up at one of our conferences, which was the best in show versus best of breed technology for advisors, which I won't say too much about because I haven't dropped the idea. So watch this space for next year, but or for 2025. But my cover on the advice guidance boundary review focused on, so what the FCA said was they'd obviously published a discussion paper a while ago looking at two aspects: targeted support and simplified advice, and then also the what the boundary between advice and guidance is, because it's often a bit of a challenge for particularly providers and banks and things like that to know how much they can say to clients without it straying into regulated advice. So the FCA is sort of clarifying that a bit more, what constitutes advice and what constitutes guidance. But what it's going to focus on with its first consultation, which actually it put out just after I'd published this cover, is on targeted support for pension savers, which, I spent 2 days just working on this cover feature. Surprised by how many people came back to me and spoke to me and gave me comments. It was quite impressive of them. One of the things, so I spoke to Mike Barrett from the Langcat, and he said that this was a sensible move from the FCA to focus on targeted support for pension savers first, because it's often like the area that people need the most support on. So what targeted support does is, instead of giving full regulated advice, companies can instead give sort of more generalized guidance. So it's sort of along the lines of, if you're in this position, if you've got this much money, if you're this age, if you're like at this stage of your life, then you might want to think about doing this, rather than tailoring it specifically for people. And then simplified advice, which the FCA said it's going to look at in a separate consultation further down the line, probably at some point in 2025. That would be slightly more tailored towards people, but not sort of full regulated advice. So my cover story sort of basically just focused on targeted support. The cover looks pretty cool. Dangerous target. But yeah, so as I said, the consultation has opened in December. And I think February, end of February it closes. So anyone with an interest in providing targeted support should get back to them before then.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes out of it.
Watch this space again.
Exactly. Time will tell.
Oh, we had to say it once. And Tom, what were you most proud of?
Well, obviously, first of all, I want to endorse everything that everyone else has said in terms of their highlighted articles. There's been really fantastic output from all the team, including Lewis, and it's been fantastic. So more highlights that we can mention. I suppose just from a point of view of a slightly more light-hearted thing that I did, because we always really enjoy doing our weekend essay sections, which will highlight at the end of the week. A more sort of change of gear to something more light-hearted, but I did one on public speaking, which I really enjoyed sort of writing. It was slightly in light of the events we'd just done in London and Leeds, and the awards, which I think we'll probably mention later. But just thinking about, took chats to other people I worked with about, their fears about public speaking and how to overcome them. And it sort of got me thinking, was I ever sort of, because I've done quite a lot of public speaking, and it doesn't really sort of faze me now, but I'm sure it did at some point or another, and sort of like my own journey on it, how I overcame it. And the fact that it's such a common fear. I chatted to, I think it was Dan Graham of Next Gen Planners, who runs this speaker and influencer program, which trains financial professionals to overcome the fear of public speaking, since it launched in 2019. And he said that most people fear public speaking more than death, which is ridiculous when you think about it. But it is it can really hold some people back. And he makes the point that once you unlock this fear, or you can overcome it, it unlocks many more kind of interactions, networking opportunities, connections, and it's been a huge boon for people. So I thought it was an interesting topic to cover, both because I think it is relatable to everyone. I could speak to it a bit sort of personally, but I could also relate it to the advantages of overcoming this fear within the financial advice sector. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. I thought it was fun.
Yeah. Wow. Being more scared of speak. I mean, I get it, I guess, because that could cause your death.
Maybe it could, but if so, all the more reason to overcome it.
Yeah.
Also, I suppose there's the point that everyone has to die. There's no choice. You have a choice of whether you get up on stage and speak in front of people or not.
I suppose that's true, but that's one for a follow-up essay, I think.
Yeah, that depends also on your position also, but if you're the editor and then you don't want to do public speaking, then you have no choice, you have to be up there.
Yeah, I'm sort of thrust towards Mike, whether I like it or not. I had to do like an opening speech at the awards ceremony, and then I got roasted by our resident comedian, which is I might write an essay how you overcome that.
Yeah. Recover from a roasting.
Oh man. But looking ahead to 2025, what emerging opportunities or themes or challenges do you think will dominate over the next year? This is a free-for-all, so anyone who wants to jump in. Can
I jump in first?
Please?
Because I wanted to talk a bit about vulnerability,
yes,
which is a topic that's definitely, I think, well, it's obviously always been important, but I do feel like over this year, it's not become more important, but it's sort of been talked about a bit more. And it's a challenge for obviously every company that serves customers or clients, but for financial advice businesses, I don't know if this is just sort of me saying stuff now, advisors may not agree, but I don't know if it's sort of partially a case of people don't necessarily think of, because obviously financial advisors' clients are often rich people, let's be honest, who have a lot of money to spend and maybe aren't necessarily thought of as being in a vulnerable position. But one of the points that I would make, and that a lot of people do make, is anyone can become vulnerable. It doesn't really matter how much money you have. You could get really ill. You could suffer from bereavement. You could even people going through divorces are potentially classified as vulnerable. So I wrote a weekend essay about my narcolepsy diagnosis, which, yes, it was a fairly tenuous link to vulnerability, but I think it was a fair sort of comparison, but a fair line to draw.
Yeah.
Because I would never class myself as vulnerable. I wrote in that weekend essay as well. I don't know if my dad would mind me saying this, but I mean, he in COVID lockdown, he was insisting that he make his run to the supermarket, even though he has type 2 diabetes and asthma and high blood pressure and probably shouldn't have been out, potentially getting COVID. But he still, like, I asked him, I was like, would you class yourself as vulnerable or having vulnerabilities? And he was like, I've never really thought about it. No, probably not. So I think the fact that people often don't consider themselves vulnerable, like I would never think, oh, I have a vulnerability just because I have narcolepsy, but actually it does affect me quite heavily. And so if people themselves don't even think of themselves as being vulnerable, then how can, advisors serving them possibly know?
Yeah.
Like, also, how much there's so many different types of vulnerability as well.
Exactly.
Like some people who are going through a divorce wouldn't consider themselves vulnerable. Others would. Just depends on how you react. I suppose there's just so many aspects to it, and I don't have an answer for what advisors can do about it, but I do think it's just something that needs detailed looking at. I know I keep going on about the FCA on this podcast, don't I? But I know it's a focus for the FCA as well. So, yeah, like I say, I don't have a conclusion to what I'm saying here, but it's definitely something that I feel like is going to gain even more traction next year.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you said, there are so many different classes of vulnerability, and not even to talk about like cognitive decline and some people who might not realize that they're declining or be a bit resistant. And then if you don't have a relationship with the rest of the family, then who are you talking to if your client is the one in cognitive decline? It's so much. There's just so much to think about. But yeah. It's an interesting subject, and I think one that will continue to be covered for years, because there'll be different classifications of vulnerability being thrown in there probably as we go along. But anyone else got any other emerging trends, challenges?
I'm going to jump in with pensions, which is hardly a new trend, but
it's always been a theme.
I'm slightly treading on Daniel's vegetable patch here, because obviously he covers pensions and regulations, so he has a nice quiet life. But what with the twin sort of like revelations of inherited pensions coming within the purview of inheritance tax in the budget, which I mentioned earlier, and also Lois's cover feature mentioned this targeted support and putting the focus on pensions on that first. Suffice to say, I think the fallout of those twin things will completely, will put pensions a lot in the spotlight in 2025. We've already had lots of discussions about them already, so watch this space for coverage on that.
And Dan, since this is your patch, is there anything what you want to add to that?
No, just kind of echoing what Tom said, really. It's been a heck of a year with all the fallout from the budget, which is, as Tom mentioned, is still ongoing. We'll go into 2025. And all the regulation, pensions, I think it would all just kind of merge into one next year. It's not my patch, but I thought I mentioned AI. I don't think you can go through a podcast now without mentioning AI.
Yeah.
And just
we're using it right now. We're not actually talking. We just told it what to do.
But it's obviously we've had all this talk for years and years now about the benefits of AI and technology, and it freeing up advisor time to have more face-to-face meeting with clients, and generally making their job easier and sort of less time consuming on labour tasks. But it's one of those, you think, how much is it helping right now? Because Mamadou wrote a really good leader on technology and AI, and said that it's based on the Next Wealth report that said despite kind of all the advances in technology over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, service levels aren't necessarily improving, the report found. And so in terms of sort of onboarding a client, it takes on average 33 days from onboarding the client to them receiving their first piece of advice. Which I thought seems like quite a long time, when we're talking about technology in the way that we do, and AI is this, wonderful thing that is going to change everyone's lives. And I'm not doubting it will, but it just doesn't seem to be translating right now. Perhaps 2025 will be different. I don't know. But AI is always an interesting one to kind of debate and keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. I think we, like in my panel at MMI Leads, we had this conversation. It was meant to be about technology in general, but ultimately just ended up being more about AI. And I think the thing, one of the, it's not Ian McKenna, but it's his partner.
Martin McKenna.
Martin McKenna. Yeah, I think what he brought up was that advisors or like financial services in general might be like one of the worst industries when it comes to like incorporating tech and doing your tech stack and having all that in place. It takes the longest time, and I don't know why that is. If it's like a personal choice, or if it's they want to see how it works for other people before they implement it themselves, whatever it may be. But I think the reason why AI has taken a while for it to actually mean anything for advisors is because like ChatGPT is fine for like sending in, like curating an email or doing generic things that aren't specified to your job role. But I think as more AI is being built, and there are companies now which specialize in financial services and financial advice, especially. I've spoken to 2 of those companies. And I think as they grow, because they are still in their, I'm not sure what the terminology is with startups, but they're still like in the baby phase, and they're still growing their client base as well. And with that means that they're also learning as the needs of their clients. So I think as they grow, there'll be more utilization. And also probably cost might have something to do with it as well, because I can't imagine some of these solutions are very cheap. Having your own personalized AI built for you. So yeah, maybe 2025 we'll see more businesses implementing and being able to give feedback.
It's an interesting point you make about cost, though, because like you said, at this stage, I hear a lot about, AI being used to record meeting notes and that kind of thing. But, the cost of, as you say, the cost of implementing it is pretty high.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just a balance now. So is it worth at the moment, for what we get is it worth what we get the money for?
Yeah.
Who was I talking to the other day, and they were saying it's best not to be like first mover, or whatever you call it. First move. It's best to be in the middle. Don't be like a laggard. But if you're a first mover, it actually costs more because you have to
you're
make
working
more
out the
mistakes.
kinks.
Yeah, exactly.
It was David Bowie who said, "Never be the first person to do anything."
But it wasn't David Bowie I was speaking to the other day.
More statistic.
Are you sure?
That would be quite remarkable if you did.
Was it a seance? And Mamadou, Darius, for you, what trends, themes do you see us talking about in 2025?
I think for my own patch, I think that would be the FCA's study into pill protection next year. I think that would be big, because the FCA is trying to zoom into this market, and see, explore, commission, explore, policies, how, those things are benefiting, customers. So I think that's one thing, advisors should keep an eye on, because that's going to be huge, for the sector, So, and the people I've spoken to, they're advising that everyone in the sectors, should pay attention to this study and be part of it, So I think definitely that's one.
Something to look out for next year. And Darius?
I like to Canva AI trend. If I may, I think
should have jumped in earlier.
I know, yeah. I just thought I'm too polite. It's because I've been to conferences. One thing that's come up is that the cost of doing investment business is rising. One thing that can match this is everyone's productivity increasing, and obviously AI is obviously tapped to one thing to do to increase productivity of whatever worker is using it, and so I know productivity has been a sort of a trend of the UK that productivity puzzle and we could be high in this sort of field. So yeah, there's a sort of like theme that by rolling out it could help. But obviously, I'm aware we have been, as we said, been talking about AI for a while now, and it's still clearly not fully implemented across the board, and there's still a lot to it. And what you said, Kim, about cost. One person of a panel did say, AI does bring a lot of opportunities with it, but there are some big costs behind it as well. It's not just might not be as simple as everyone else thinks, but just let's get our AI involved, and then everything's become incredibly streamlined and cost efficient. There is a lot of background homework to this as well, to line up and make sure it's doing what it's meant to be doing for everyone involved. So yeah, I'd go back to AI.
Yeah, and also regulation, because we haven't really talked about regulation when it comes to AI. So that will be interesting.
No, yeah.
When the FCA catches up to that.
A lot of ethical standpoints.
But we haven't really talked about regulation.
Yes.
No. I was saying we haven't talked about regulation in terms
really
of
happened
AI.
in 2024. No.
Yeah. But yeah. But on a personal note, guys, I want to know what moments stood out for you. What were your favorite moments working with money marketing this year?
I mean, every day's an amazing day working with money marketing.
Aww.
They're a great bunch, aren't they? They're a great bunch.
That's so sacred.
No, for me, it was going back to what Tom was saying about the fear of public speaking. I definitely fall into that camp. I mean, I wouldn't say I fear it more than death, but it's not far off. It's not something that comes to me naturally, and never particularly enjoyed it, and never really had to do much of it in the past. So this year kind of threw me into that. Through not so much through podcasts, but our two conferences, MMI Leeds and MMI London. I had to chair a panel on both of those, which I was really, really nervous about beforehand. But yeah, kind of pushed me out my comfort zone. I'm really glad that I did it. As Tom said, it kind of, once you've broken that initial fear, it does help. So London was a bit of a baptism of fire, but Leeds felt a bit more comfortable, and so yeah, I was quite from a personal point of view, I was quite pleased with how they went. Finally breaking the duck. So next year, hopefully, just get less and less nervous about that kind of thing. Yeah,
you slayed, so it's fine.
Thanks.
But I don't know, maybe try thinking of the audience as like NPCs in like not in a rude way, just like they're just like audience that are just put there, like the Truman Show.
I won't mention any advisors' names or anything, but one they were very supportive beforehand, because I think they could sense it, and we were having a bit of a joke and a bit of a chat beforehand just to kind of ease tensions, because I didn't realise that there were a couple of people on my panel who had never in a million years have thought were in any way nervous. They've been doing it a long time. They said they still get nerves every time they go up on stage, but he said to me, is the classic one, it's like, oh, just when you go out there, just think of everyone naked.
That doesn't work well.
Just as I was about to go on stage, I thought, yeah, I'm not going to do that, but that's fine. But,
yeah, that doesn't work, because you'll forget what you were thinking, because you'll be too busy trying to visualize people naked, and then that's weird and intrusive and potentially illegal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
And also,
sorry, I had to lower the tone of the podcast. I had to get that one in there.
Darius said that he was in the front row, so that would have been really weird for you to.
Yeah, I think we never chatted. Dan, that's a bit much. But
right. But anyone else want to jump in with their favorite moments?
As we were mentioning, obviously I can't top that, but as we were mentioning Leeds, anyway, that was going to be my personal highlight. It was because it was delayed from earlier in the year. We'd had to move it because of some train strikes, which meant that we had both MMI London and MMI Leeds in the same month, and then chuck in the budget too. It meant that was a bit of an adrenaline-fueled period, but both events had their moments. But Leeds in particular, I thought we had some really good panels. I thought it was really well organised. Everyone came away with it thinking that they'd had some good takeaways. I did a nice on stage with Nick Watt, the BBC journalist, at the start of the day, which I thought went really well. The audience responded well to that. I was going to mention, you already mentioned it actually, Kim, your tech panel. I thought was really, really interesting, partly because it was harnessing tech to create efficiency, partly because there was a tech skeptic on the panel, which is nice because quite often you get people just sitting up there and sort of blinding you with science and talking about, oh, isn't this a wonderful whizzy tech? Yeah. And he was just saying, well, look, I just don't trust AI. I don't trust technology. I'm not. So the people who were advocating for tech had to sort of make their case a little bit more than they would. Yeah,
that turned out really well because he said he's someone who does love tech, and in his own company, he's the one to bring something first. But with AI, he's still a bit like, I don't know if this is as this big shiny unicorn that everyone keeps screaming about. And it was really interesting to see everyone kind of petitioning to him and being like, no, this is how it could work for you.
I've heard from a couple of people on that panel since that they've kept in touch with him and they've kept up the pressure to convert him. So there we go. Something good came out of it.
Yeah, no. I would love to do a re-up next year and see if his mind has changed.
But yeah, no, it was a good event all in all, and it was lovely to be in the fantastic city of Leeds. Just in general, it's a really nice place, and the hotel was very nice, and I had a very nice breakfast in the morning. So it was from all angles, it was extremely nice.
Yeah. Anyone else want to shout out their favorite moments?
Yes.
Yes.
Mine was at the Money Marketing Awards. It's quite short. It's when the compere Lucy Porter referred to me as the Queen of Money Marketing. When I was on stage, I went up to hand out an award, and she was like, "Oh, it's the Queen of Money Marketing." And when I was walking up on stage, I wasn't really paying attention to what she was saying, although I did want to listen because she'd said something about every single person who'd gone up on stage. So I did want to listen to what she was saying, but I didn't really because I was trying to concentrate on not falling over in my massive heels. So then I wondered why afterwards people kept coming up to me and going, "Oh, it's the Queen of Money Marketing." And then I think it was Katie, my friend and former editor, who said, "Oh yeah, well, that's what Lucy Porter said about you." So I was like, "Oh, that's why." So that was my highlight of the entire year, being called the Queen.
You did better than me, Lois. I got called the Milky Bar Kid.
Oh yeah, that didn't stop.
By Lucy Porter, which is a step down. She did also describe me as a sensitive lover. So I mean, you have to take your
how did she
rough with the smooth. How did she know?
The best of everyone. So.
I don't know what she said to me.
I just got Coops. Coops was mine, which is my nickname at school anyway. So it was like, oh, how did she know?
Yeah. I feel like she just flirted with Mamadou.
Yeah, when she called me James Bond, which was kind of like, it was like, wow, yeah. I mean, you can take the role of James Bond. I was like, okay. I mean, I would take that, So yeah.
When I went up, I thought Lucy Porter said I look like James Bond.
Really?
Oh no!
I was literally about to say, you're following what Lois said. Yeah, what Lucy Porter described as was probably my highlight. And I didn't realise other people got a James Bond tag. Yeah,
you're all James Bond. Don't worry.
When we turn up looking dapper, when we turn up looking very dapper, so I guess.
I just thought we get, I don't know, one get Piers Bronson, one get Daniel Craig or something. Okay, well, yeah. Well, yeah, my highlight was to be James Bond, but I didn't realise someone else got a duplicate. So that sort of rained my parade, really. So don't bother asking me what my highlight was now.
Oh, okay, Darius.
Yeah, so I'm out. I'm done. I've got nothing.
Mama, do you have another highlight? Since Darius is salty now.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Darius. I mean, but you felt that way, but as I say, she was kind of like this. But yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, the summer party, I think that was fun, as Dan says, I mean, you guys are, a fantastic bunch to, to work with, every day is a fun day, so it's very hard to fault anyone here, but it feels like a family, everyone is.
And not in that terrible, we're a family, but we're going to exploit you kind of way. Exactly.
Kind of like everyone is complimentary, everyone is supportive and very, very understanding, so, but if you're, going through, rough patches, people there to give you support. If you're struggling with, access and stuff, people are there, so yeah, as I keep saying, that's one of the highlights, of what I've been working here. Amazing. From Tom to everyone, just fantastic, and then to top it all, I have Kim, as my, as my, desk,
next to you, desk mate.
Yeah.
As your distraction daily.
No. I mean, Kim is so, have this kind of like happy disposition, So yeah, when next to Kim.
Yay. Stop. That's too much.
I can't believe you ended on that note. You and Kim must have set that up.
No, I didn't. I'm genuinely like, now I'm like, what do I say? But thank you. That was really nice. It's good to know that I'm not like annoying. Darius might say something different, but that's fine. Darius, are you sure you don't have a favorite moment you want to highlight?
It's probably the fact that I sit opposite you, Kim, as well.
Oh, so, yeah, God,
I'm going to copy mum with it again. I would say this year, the highlight is that this year, I know everyone always says this, and it's one of the most common used cliches, but this year feels like it has moved like really quickly. I'm like a lot more quicker than other years when they say it moves quickly. I still remember coming to the office for the first day and saying morning to Tom and Dan. And that really, that feels like, I don't know, a week ago or something. It's moved. This year's moved, and like more enough's happened. There's just been enough news stories, enough big events. Not just financial, but globally as well. But it just feels like it has moved really quickly. And I'd say the speed this year felt like a new level compared to others.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I relate to that as well. And my favorite moment has been working with you guys. Like everyone has said, you're all super supportive, and even when things are moving super fast, I think we all check in on each other, which is really great. So it's been an absolute breeze to work with you guys. You don't make work hard. The work makes work hard. But it's just been really great to work with all of you guys and check in and do these podcasts. And you guys allow me to yap for as long as I want. So thank you. And I can't wait to do more next year. So thank you. And we look forward to talking to you guys, the audience, next year, and tune in for everything we have coming out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
Bye. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.